Hi everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Election 2012 in Social Media. I'm Todd Bailey, Vice President of Marketing and Digital Strategy at WebiMax. And today I'm joined again by Mike Stricker, our Director of Social Media. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate being here.
Well, let's get right into what's going on. And we wanted to take a little step back, and I wanted to get your impression and thoughts of what an actual presidential Twitter campaign might look like.
Oh, that's a good question. I think the best way I can approach that is to draw a parallel between a presidential election campaign and, say, a marketing campaign. And I would say, number one, in other words, Obama, who's the incumbent president, can approach the campaign from a high level, and he can be confident, and he can talk about his own initiatives and the things that he's accomplished. He needs to talk about how established he is and how safe people would be, just voting for him again. And we see this with Coca-Cola or Hertz, car rental or something. Whereas number two, Romney coming up against Obama, in a number two position, you have to erode confidence in number one, and you have to talk about, of course, your own record, but you have to chip away at the reputation of number one. And you can name number one if you're number two, but you can't name number two much if you're number one, because you're sort of above all that, is just the way it characterizes it.
Mm-hmm. So every Twitter user places links into their tweets. Are these candidates the same? Are we seeing them using links within their tweets?
Yeah. Oh, certainly. Almost every single tweet that we can see has some kind of link to some, sometimes rich media, a video or something like that, which is great. But a lot of times, a web page about the platform, their campaign. I think the difference between the two is the supporting material, the content that's around the link. And if I had to characterize, I would look at it from the point of view that, like, for instance, Romney's tweets tend to be brief in comparison to Obama's, and that they're more likely to introduce a subject and treat the link as the resolution and rely on people clicking through and going ahead and reading the rest of it. Whereas on the other side, Obama usually puts some kind of additional statistical information or some kind of very short factoid into the tweet. So it's more freestanding and you get a better sense of what he's getting at. And I think this becomes critical when you think of their cloud score, say, or when you combine several scores that say how effective their social media is. That can affect what kind of click-through they achieve, how many people go to that link. Obama has a nearly perfect cloud score. Lots of people read his stuff, follow his stuff, and click through his stuff. So he can rely on people clicking through. But while Romney's growing the strength of his campaign, I don't think he can rely on people clicking through, because his cloud score is more in the 50 to 60% range. So he might be a little off in that regard. He might have to be a little more complete in his messaging to then entice people to click through.
Well, two different strategies as far as how they're positioning their tweets, and great insights there. How about actual metrics among supporters? Is there any advantages related to the total tweet volume or the unique tweeters?
Yeah. This comes out of Mashable.com had an infographic from Peak Analytics, and so it's nice when people share this kind of information. If we look at the tweets that use the president's name as a hashtag, which we would think would be a great indicator of somebody's interest, we see that there's 141% advantage in the messages about Obama. So, that's pretty significant when we're talking about hundreds of thousands of messages, as we are in this case, or tens of thousands of messages. And this was done over a 30-day period. So, as election approaches, the volume is going to go up even more, so the advantage will actually grow. With regard to the unique tweeters that are tweeting about the particular candidate, we see a 2-to-1 advantage for Obama. So he has more actual Twitter accounts tweeting his hashtag. Now, some of those could be and probably are negative, but what the proportion is, we don't know. But 2-to-1 is 2-to-1.
So with these differences, any contrast related to the college educated tweeters?
There's a little bit of a contrast, and it's kind of this oddity that the state college graduates the state university graduates are coming down, probably somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 12% more in favor of Romney. And yet, if we go to the other side of the college-educated spectrum, we see the Ivy League educated, college-educated individuals coming down with a 4 times advantage for Obama. Now, the percentages are small. When we talk about Ivy League, 11% of those are in favor of Obama, 3% in favor of Romney. College-educated people can tend to be a little bit more persuasive maybe than others, so maybe there's some kind of effect there, but it's curious to see the difference between the two.
Yeah, interesting. Now, the actual profiles for each candidate, what are they looking like? Their basic setups, the design, what it's actually saying within their descriptions?
Yeah, that's great. One of the first things that you do for a Twitter account is you set it up thoroughly, and you want to make sure that you're using all of the right information in, say, your biography. So, for a candidate, there's some very important keywords that we would expect to be in there, possibly some hashtags, maybe some links to important figures in the campaign or important sources of material. So we're a little surprised when we look at Romney's biography for his Twitter account, and it just basically says his name and the fact that he was governor of Massachusetts. Doesn't say president, doesn't say campaign, it doesn't say lots of things that we would expect there, nor does it provide a link to other material. So we think it's a little flat, we think it's missing a few items. On the other side, if we look at, say, Obama's, we see his biography coming across with a description of why the account, what's the reason for it to exist. This account is run by hashtag Obama 2012 campaign. So you've got a hashtag, the name of his campaign. People can find more information about him like that, just looking for that hashtag. And then tweets from the president, and they say the word president, which we think is important, are signed, and they say they're going to be signed by the initials BO. He goes a step further and he localizes his campaign. So when you set up a Twitter account, you put what portion of the country you're from. Romney doesn't do this. Now, maybe he's trying to appear more national by not doing it. The president and the government is, federal government's in Washington, D.C. Obama says Washington, D.C. So we think that's a strength. And then finally, Obama's ends up with a link to his campaign website. So.
Yeah, I really like Obama's strategy, just allowing his community to understand how they can engage with the Twitter, within Twitter.
That's right. He's giving people what they want, and he's also giving some SEO strength to his campaign.
So how about stats as far as a snapshot? How many followers, tweets, what are we seeing with both candidates currently?
Looking at the numbers, they're high volume numbers, but if I compare them, I would look at, first of all, the total volume of tweets that each campaign has emitted. And we have to say there's like a 448% advantage to Obama's number of tweets over Romney's. We have to go back too and say this may be the same Twitter account that was operated by Obama in his previous campaign, so of course it would have more tweets showing up. But that's a significant volume of tweets, and getting the word out, that's what it's about for a campaign. If we look at the following, this is where they really widely diverge, and that's to say that I want to word this right, because Romney has a small number of Twitter accounts that he is following himself. His campaign follows few people. Few influential people, maybe some people in the media, some of his supporters, some highly placed elected officials. But Obama follows lots of people back. He follows a lot. So Obama follows 2,379 times more individuals than Romney does. And so that's a lot, that's a huge difference. Sure. We're going to conjecture about the reason behind that. And we might say that, as number 2, Romney may be more concerned about allowing negative tweets to enter his tweet stream. By following others, he's that much more likely to allow that commentary into his tweet stream. So he's a lot more sanitized about whose voice he's going to permit to be seen among his tweets. Obama, populist figure, and very open in a lot of ways. And probably it's a good demonstration of confidence for him to say, I can take a few dings, I can take a few shots, and that's fine, they'll bounce off of me. So, we talked about tweets, we talked about following, and then with regard to the followers themselves, we see Obama's advantage 29 times the number of followers that Romney has. Again, just the disclaimer is that Obama's account is older, he may have some of his original followers in there, so that gives him advantage, but elections are about the numbers, and he has 29 times.
Yeah, so that number really hasn't changed since our first episode. Do you see Romney climbing or closing the gap anytime soon?
I think, it's only been about maybe 30 days since we last spoke, so don't see it closing. I know that they're both ramping up in the total number of followers. Whether one of them is going to plateau or not, it'll be interesting to see in the weeks ahead.
Sure. So I do like Obama's strategy with the transparency and the amount of folks that he is following. How about the sentiment overall? Does that weigh into that?
Yeah. If you look in the total Twitter sphere, if you will, and all the things that are being said about the candidates, there are a significant number of negative things being said about them by others. And of course there is, and there's lots of, it's interesting too, when you look at the influence and the negative sentiment of the influential, the people who have the most following and all of that, you find negative comments from highly placed government individuals and such, but you also see negative comments from the comedians. So you see them up there, and they are, their tweets are as influential as anybody else's. This week they will be negative about Obama, and next week they'll be negative about Romney. And that's the overall sentiment.
Because it's the nature of the beast when you're a public figure. So what type of topics are they breaking down within specifically Twitter?
The topics that the candidates take on themselves in their tweet streams are, and when we go back to the original statement about if you're number one or if you're number two, we would expect that Obama would come off very confident and talk about his established reputation, the great things that he had done, and beat that drum. And it's just a little peculiar for him when we look at the actual topics of his tweets, and if you just bear with me for 1 second here. If we take the top 3 topics of material that he addresses, he actually has 35% of his tweets as negative attacks on Romney. What he did as governor of Massachusetts, what he's been doing during his campaign, maybe sometimes about his economic policies and the statements that he makes. So a third of his tweets that Obama is making are anti-Romney, which is maybe more than I might expect. Coming in second in number of tweets would be my successful policies, I'll call it. That's where Obama talks about, I did this for jobs, I did this for the economy, and he talks about his record, which is great. But at 21%, it's running a distant second to the number of negative tweets that he's making. And then in third place would be, I'm going to call it populist touch. So for Obama, when he tweets about celebrities and stars and thought leaders who support him, maybe do a fundraiser on behalf of him, or have an event, or something along those lines, that's great. He associates them himself with their followings, and he enables them to influence their following about him. So it's a great strategy for him. That's all good stuff, but maybe a little bit more negative than we might expect. On the other side, if we look at Mitt Romney's topics, he's about 45% negative attacks. You might say, wow, that's a lot, maybe it's a little strident, but I think that that's to be expected. When you're number two, if you want that slot, you're really going to have to, chip away at the reputation of the president. And then there's a wide gulf between that, and then 10% of his tweets are about family, either about family in general or especially about his own family, his wife Anne, and she's employed being the homemaker and that kind of thing. And then another 10 or 11% where he's thanking his peers. thanking his peers, thanking people who support his campaign, connecting himself with people who are elected officials who support him, which helps him leverage his position, I guess, which is good. But when we compare him thanking peers with Obama, Obama only thanks about 1% of his messages are about thanking his peers. So I guess it's either that he's so far above it or he's got lots of other things to talk about. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Not sure if that's a good or a bad, but that being said, let's talk a little bit about errors or missed opportunities within the Twitter campaigns. Anything you've seen from either candidate?
Yeah, we talked about how, like for instance, their bios. We've got Obama and he states Washington, D.C. in his, and Mitt Romney's still identifying with Massachusetts, but that's in the past. Mitt Romney is just working now still at the end of his Every Town Counts tour. So he's literally on a bus and he's campaigning. He's stumping from city to city. Yet his campaign only in the stream of, like the 30-day stream of tweets that we read through laboriously, he tweets twice about states specifically. And Twitter does a great job of geolocating, of localizing tweets to particular areas, so that if I live in a particular area, I can find the tweets about New Jersey, Philadelphia, whatever. He's not taking advantage of that, and yet he's on a state-by-state campaign going around the states. There is one thing that he's doing well, and that's that he has lots of Instagram images of him at these states. So he will say something like, "Look at this tweet from my campaign, this image," and when you look up the image on Instagram, there it will be localized. There it will name the city and the state and all of that. And there is engagement there. People are actually commenting there. But there's not a lot of engagement with the tweet itself. People aren't retweeting or commenting on it necessarily. They're going through to the image. So he's working images pretty well, but lacking the localization. I think that would be a great advantage for him.
Okay. Well, you know what? You've given us some great insights today, and I appreciate you taking the time. So we look forward to having you again next week, and we'll talk more election 2012.
Great.
Be sure to follow us at WebiMax on Twitter, and I'm Todd Bailey, and we will see you soon.